Wormwood is coming, and almost no one understands what it means. Right now, at this very moment, NASA is tracking objects in space that most people have never heard about. Objects from beyond our solar system. And buried in an ancient text, written nearly 2,000 years ago, there's a prophecy that describes something falling from the heavens. It's called Wormwood. You will be shocked when you discover 5 findings about Wormwood. Discovery 1. What Wormwood actually is. Turn with me to the book of Revelation, chapter 8. We're going to read verses 10 and 11, and I want you to pay attention to every single detail, because what John describes here is more specific than most people realize. Revelation 8, 10 to 11. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters, because they were made bitter. Let me break down exactly what John is seeing here, because every phrase matters. The third angel sounded. This is the third trumpet judgment. Not the first, not the second. The third in a specific sequence of 7 trumpet judgments that occurred during the tribulation period. That sequence is critical. We'll come back to it in Discovery 4, but for now, understand that Wormwood doesn't happen in isolation. It's part of an escalating series of judgments, each one more severe than the last. There fell a great star from heaven. A great star. The Greek word is Esther megas, a large, significant celestial body. Not a small meteor, not space debris, something massive enough to be described as great. From heaven. From the celestial realm, from space, from beyond Earth's atmosphere. This is an extraterrestrial object, using that term in its proper astronomical sense. Something originating outside Earth. And it fell. Past tense in John's vision, future tense in our timeline. It's coming down, descending, burning as it were a lamp. This is one of the most specific details, and it tells us something crucial about the nature of this object. It's not just falling, it's burning, actively burning, generating light and heat, glowing like a lamp or torch as it descends. When objects enter Earth's atmosphere at high speeds, friction creates heat. They burn up, creating the shooting stars we see at night. But John's description suggests this object is burning before atmospheric entry, or the burning is so intense that it's visible from a great distance. This could mean several things. The object is approaching the sun and being heated, causing volatile materials to burn off. The object is moving at such extreme speeds that it's generating visible heat. The object has an unusual composition that causes it to burn differently than normal space rocks. Keep this detail in mind. It becomes important when we discuss what this object actually is. It fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. Now here's where it gets very specific. The target isn't random. It's not cities. It's not land masses. It's not the oceans. It's rivers and fountains of waters. Fresh water sources. The places where rivers originate. The springs and aquifers that feed water systems. The Greek word potamos means flowing water, rivers, streams, and pej means springs, fountains, sources, the origin points of water. John is describing an impact or effect that specifically targets fresh water sources. Not all water, not salt water, fresh water, the water that humans need to survive. And And notice the fraction, 1/3. Not all of it, not most of it, 1/3. This is a specific, measured judgment, enough to cause catastrophic consequences, but not total annihilation. Not yet. The name of the star is called Wormwood. This is fascinating. John doesn't say, "I decided to call it Wormwood." He says the name of the star is called Wormwood, as if the name already exists, as if this object has been named before it falls. The Greek word is absinthos, wormwood. This refers to a plant, Artemisia absinthium, known for being intensely bitter and toxic in large quantities. Wormwood was used in the ancient world as medicine in small doses, but consuming large amounts could cause seizures, kidney failure, and death. It was synonymous with bitterness and suffering. In the Old Testament, wormwood appears multiple times as a symbol of judgment, calamity, and God's displeasure. Deuteronomy 29:18. Lest there should be among you man, or woman, or family, or tribe, whose heart turneth away this day from the Lord our God, to go and serve the gods of these nations, lest there should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood. Proverbs 5:4. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Jeremiah 9:15. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Behold, I will feed them, even this people, with wormwood, and give them water of gall to drink. Throughout Scripture, wormwood represents bitterness, suffering, judgment, and poison. So when John sees this star and identifies it as wormwood, he's connecting it to this entire biblical tradition of judgment and calamity. The third part of the waters became wormwood. The waters don't just get contaminated, they become wormwood. They take on the characteristics of this bitter, toxic substance. They become undrinkable, poisonous, deadly. Think about the significance of this. Water is essential for human life. You can survive weeks without food. But without water? 3 days. Maybe a week in ideal conditions. That's it. And John is describing 1/3 of the world's fresh water becoming poisoned, unusable, deadly to drink. In our modern world, that would mean billions of people without access to safe drinking water. Agricultural collapse as crops can't be irrigated. Livestock dying from contaminated water. Industrial and economic systems failing. Mass migration as populations flee poisoned water sources. Wars over remaining clean water resources. Disease outbreaks from lack of sanitation. 1/3 of fresh water being poisoned doesn't just cause inconvenience, it causes civilizational collapse. Many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. The final result: death. Not everyone dies. John doesn't say all men died, but many, a significant portion of the population. And notice the cause: because they were made bitter. The bitterness, the toxicity, the poison, the contamination is what kills them. People are thirsty. The vegetation is already destroyed from the first trumpet. The oceans are already contaminated from the second trumpet. Fresh water is the only resource left. So they drink, even though the water tastes wrong, even though it's bitter, because they have no choice. And slowly, over days or weeks, the poison accumulates. The toxins build up, organs fail, and they die. Not from the impact itself, not from immediate catastrophe, but from drinking the water, from consuming what has become wormwood. Why water? the question you need to ask. Now, before we move on, I need you to ask yourself a question. Why does this judgment specifically target water? God could judge humanity in countless ways. Why contaminate water specifically? Why make it bitter specifically? Why 1/3 specifically? That question is more significant than you realize. And we're going to answer it fully in Discovery 5. But for now, keep it in mind. Because the fact that God chooses to judge through water contamination reveals something profound about the spiritual nature of the judgment. But first, we need to address something critical. Because most people who have heard of Wormwood get it completely wrong. Discovery 2. Why everyone gets this wrong. For nearly 2,000 years, believers have read Revelation 8 and tried to figure out what wormwood means. And for nearly 2,000 years, most interpretations have been wrong. Let me show you the 4 major misinterpretations, because I can almost guarantee you've heard at least one of these. And you need to understand why they don't work. Misinterpretation number 1, pure symbolism. This is probably the most common interpretation among modern scholars and liberal theologians. They say wormwood is purely symbolic. It's not a literal star, not a literal impact, not literal poisoned water. According to this view, wormwood represents spiritual bitterness, false teaching, apostasy, or the corrupting influence of sin. The star is a fallen leader or false prophet. The waters are people or nations. The bitterness is spiritual corruption. Why this doesn't work? First, the context. Revelation 8 is describing physical judgments with measurable effects. The first trumpet burns up 1/3 of trees and grass. That's physical. The second trumpet turns 1/3 of the sea to blood and kills 1/3 of sea creatures. That's physical. Why would the third trumpet suddenly be purely symbolic while the others are literal? Third, the death toll. John says many men died, not many fell away spiritually, or many were corrupted morally. Died. That's physical death, not symbolic spiritual death. The pure symbolism interpretation requires ignoring the context, dismissing the specificity, and redefining death as something other than actual death. It doesn't work. Misinterpretation number 2. Already happened historically. Some commentators have tried to identify wormwood with historical events. Various candidates have been proposed: the fall of the Roman Empire, the star being a corrupt leader, various heresies that poisoned the early church, specific barbarian invasions, natural disasters throughout history, various wars and catastrophes. Why this doesn't work? None of these events match all the details. None involved a celestial object falling from heaven. None contaminated 1/3 of the world's rivers and springs. None fit within the sequential context of the 7 trumpet judgments. If wormwood already happened, then the first 2 trumpets also already happened, since wormwood is the third. But we have no historical record of 1/3 of Earth's vegetation being destroyed and 1/3 of the ocean turning to blood in that sequence. The historical interpretation fails because no past event fits all the criteria. Misinterpretation number 3. Nuclear warfare allegory. This is a more modern interpretation. Some claim wormwood represents nuclear war. The star is a nuclear missile or bomb. The bitterness is radiation. The contaminated water is nuclear fallout poisoning water supplies. Why this doesn't work? While this interpretation at least recognizes wormwood as a future, physical event, it still misses key details. Nuclear weapons don't fall from heaven in the astronomical sense. They're terrestrial, launched from Earth, targeting Earth. A missile isn't a star. Nuclear contamination would affect all water in the blast area, not specifically 1/3 of rivers and springs globally. The pattern is wrong. The description of burning like a lamp doesn't match nuclear detonation. That would be described as blinding light or consuming fire, not a lamp. Most importantly, Revelation distinguishes between human warfare and divine judgment. The trumpet judgments are God's direct action, not human weapons being used. Nuclear warfare might occur during the tribulation, but it's not what Wormwood describes. Misinterpretation number 4. The Chernobyl connection. This is the interpretation that sounds most convincing to most people, so I need to spend more time on it. April 26, 1986. Reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine explodes. It's the worst nuclear disaster in human history. Massive amounts of radioactive material are released into the atmosphere. The surrounding area becomes uninhabitable. Water supplies are contaminated. People die from radiation exposure. And here's what captured everyone's attention. The word Chernobyl in Ukrainian and Russian literally translates to wormwood. The same plant, the same word. When this connection became known, many Christians immediately said, "This is it. This is wormwood. The prophecy has been fulfilled." But here's the problem. Here's why Chernobyl, despite its name, is not the wormwood of Revelation 8. Why Chernobyl doesn't fit. Let's go back to Revelation 8:10-11 and check each detail. There fell a great star from heaven. Chernobyl was not a star. It was not from heaven. It was a man-made reactor built on the ground that exploded. Nothing fell from the sky, burning as it were a lamp. The Chernobyl explosion did burn and release radioactive material, but it wasn't a celestial object burning as it descended. The fire was terrestrial. It fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. Chernobyl affected a regional area, primarily around northern Ukraine and southern Belarus. It did not impact 1/3 of the world's rivers and springs. The Pripyat River was contaminated. Some groundwater was affected, but 1/3 of global fresh water? Not even close. Many men died. The official death toll from Chernobyl is contested, but estimates range from 4,000 to 60,000 deaths, when including long-term cancer deaths. That's significant regionally, but not the global catastrophe that many men in Revelation suggests. When Revelation says many in the context of global judgment, it's talking about millions, possibly billions. Moreover, Chernobyl doesn't fit the sequential context. The first trumpet, 1/3 of vegetation destroyed, didn't happen before Chernobyl. The second trumpet, 1/3 of sea turned to blood, didn't happen before Chernobyl. The fourth trumpet, 1/3 of sun, moon, and stars darkened, didn't happen after Chernobyl. Chernobyl was not the third trumpet. It was not wormwood. Chernobyl gave us a glimpse, a limited, regional glimpse, of the global catastrophe that's coming. It showed us that water contamination on a large scale is possible, that it can happen suddenly, that it's devastating when it occurs. But Chernobyl was not the fulfillment. It was the warning of what's to come. So if all these interpretations are wrong, what is wormwood actually? What kind of celestial object could fall from heaven, burn like a lamp, and specifically poison 1/3 of Earth's fresh water? For most of history, that question was unanswerable. People could speculate. but there was no scientific framework for understanding what John described. Until now. Because in the last decade, scientists have discovered something that changes everything. Something that explains exactly what Wormwood could be. Something that makes this ancient prophecy not just possible, but scientifically plausible. And that's what we need to discuss next. Discovery 3. The scientific reality. What could actually poison water globally? For centuries, when people thought about celestial objects that could impact Earth, they imagined comets or asteroids. And for centuries, there was a problem. Normal comets and asteroids don't fit the Wormwood prophecy. Here's why. The comet problem. Comets are often called dirty snowballs. They're composed primarily of ice, water ice, carbon dioxide ice, methane ice, and other frozen compounds mixed with rock and dust. When a comet approaches the sun, that ice sublimates, turns directly from solid to gas, creating the characteristic tail we see. Now, imagine a comet impacting Earth or breaking apart in the atmosphere. What would happen to the water supply? The ice would melt. It would become water. More water. Not poisoned water. Not bitter water. Just more water. Comets don't poison water. They add water. The composition is wrong for fulfilling the Wormwood prophecy. The asteroid problem. Most asteroids are rocky or metallic, but they're typically composed of materials that, while potentially destructive in an impact, wouldn't specifically poison water in the way Revelation describes. A large asteroid impact would certainly cause catastrophic effects. Massive explosion. Tsunamis if it hit ocean. Dust and debris blocking sunlight. Climate change from impact winter. Destruction of ecosystems. But making water bitter and poisonous? That requires a specific type of contamination that normal rocky asteroids don't provide. So for most of history, the scientific understanding of space objects didn't line up with the biblical description of Wormwood. Until recently, the discovery that changes everything. Interstellar objects. October 19, 2017. Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii detects something unusual. Very unusual. An object moving through our solar system, but not like anything we've seen before. Its trajectory indicates it came from outside our solar system, from interstellar space, from another star system. They name it Oumuamua, Hawaiian for scout or messenger. This is the first confirmed interstellar object ever detected passing through our solar system. And when scientists analyze its characteristics, they find something shocking. Oumuamua is moving in ways that gravity alone can't explain. It appears to be accelerating slightly, as if something is pushing it. And its composition is unusual. Scientists debate whether it's a comet, an asteroid, or something else entirely. Some speculate it might even be artificial, a probe from another civilization. But here's what matters for our discussion. Oumuamua proved that objects from outside our solar system can and do pass through. And these interstellar objects can have compositions very different from objects that formed in our solar system. The second discovery, August 30th, 2019. Amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov discovers another interstellar object, 2I/Borisov. This one is more clearly a comet with a visible tail. But again, its origin is from beyond our solar system, and its composition shows differences from typical solar system comets. Now we have confirmation. Interstellar objects pass through our solar system more frequently than we thought. We just haven't been looking for them until recently. Since then, more candidates have been identified. Objects with unusual orbits, strange compositions, behavior that doesn't match standard models. And here's what's critically important. Some of these objects show evidence of high metallic content, unusual concentrations of nickel, iron, and other heavy metals. Not ice, not rock, metals. Why this matters: heavy metal poisoning. Now let me explain why metallic space objects solve the Wormwood puzzle. Heavy metals, like nickel, iron in large quantities, lead, cadmium, mercury, arsenic, are toxic to human life. If a large object composed primarily of heavy metals were to impact Earth or break apart in the atmosphere, here's what would happen. The metals would be dispersed over a vast area. Dust particles containing these metals would settle into water sources, rivers, lakes, springs, groundwater. The metals would dissolve into the water, contaminating it. The water would taste bitter or metallic, exactly as Revelation describes. People drinking this water would experience heavy metal poisoning, nausea and vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, neurological symptoms, kidney failure, liver damage, eventually, death. The poisoning wouldn't be instant. People would drink the water because they're thirsty and have no alternative. The toxins would accumulate over days or weeks, and then the deaths would begin. This is exactly what Revelation describes. Water that becomes bitter and poisonous. People who die from drinking it. The geographic distribution. But how would one object contaminate 1/3 of Earth's rivers and springs? Consider this. If a large metallic object broke apart in the atmosphere, the debris field could spread across thousands of miles. Depending on the altitude of breakup and atmospheric conditions, metallic dust could be carried by wind patterns across continents. Or, if the object impacted in a specific location, like a major watershed region where multiple river systems originate, the contamination could spread through interconnected water systems. The Rocky Mountains in North America, for example, are the source of multiple major river systems. The Himalayas feed rivers that supply billions of people in Asia. The East African highlands source the Nile and other major rivers. An impact or airburst over one of these regions could contaminate water sources that affect 1/3 of the global population. The geographic distribution John describes is not only possible, it's exactly what you'd expect from a metallic object breaking apart over a major watershed region. Remember that detail from Revelation 8:10? The star burns, as it were, a lamp. When metallic objects enter the atmosphere at high speeds, they don't just burn, they create spectacular displays. The metals vaporize and create bright, sustained glows. Iron and nickel, in particular, create brilliant orange and greenish lights. An object with high metal content would burn much brighter and longer than a typical rocky meteorite. It would indeed look like a lamp or torch blazing across the sky. Ancient people, seeing such an object, would describe it exactly as John does: a great star, burning like a lamp, falling from heaven. Here's something else to consider. Until very recently, we wouldn't have known about most of these objects. We didn't have the telescopes, the tracking systems, or the awareness to detect interstellar visitors. But now we do. Now we're discovering them regularly. Now we understand they exist, and that they can have compositions very different from what we expected. The prophecy was written 2,000 years ago. But only in the last decade have we gained the scientific knowledge to understand how it could be fulfilled. That's not coincidence. That's providence. God revealing in our time how ancient prophecy will become modern reality. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Even though we can detect these objects, we can't stop them. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office exists to track near-Earth objects and develop strategies for deflecting potential threats. But their capabilities are limited. For an object we detect years in advance, moving slowly enough and small enough, we might be able to deflect it with kinetic impactors, basically hitting it with a spacecraft to change its trajectory. But for a large object, detected only weeks or months in advance? For an interstellar object moving at extreme speeds? For something the size that would be described as a great star? We have no defense. We can only watch it come. And if Wormwood is, as Revelation says, a judgment from God, if it's the third trumpet sounded by an angel, then no human technology will stop it. We will see it coming. We will track its approach. Scientists will calculate the impact zone. Governments will issue warnings, and it will fall exactly as God decreed, exactly as John prophesied, exactly where and when it's supposed to. The scientific plausibility. So here's what we now know. Interstellar objects with high metallic content exist and pass through our solar system. Such objects, if they impacted or broke apart over Earth, would contaminate water sources with heavy metals. The contamination would make water bitter and poisonous, exactly as Revelation describes. The geographic distribution could easily affect 1/3 of major river systems and springs. The death toll from drinking contaminated water would be massive. We have no effective defense against such an object. Wormwood is not scientifically impossible. It's scientifically plausible. We now have the framework to understand exactly how this prophecy could be fulfilled. The question isn't whether Wormwood could happen. The question is when. And that's what we need to discuss next. Because Wormwood doesn't happen randomly. It happens at a specific point in a specific sequence. And understanding that sequence tells us something crucial about where we are in the timeline of prophetic events. Discovery 4. The sequence of judgments. Where we are now. Revelation 8:10 begins with these words, "And the third angel sounded." Third, not first, not second. Third. That means 2 trumpet judgments have already occurred before Wormwood falls. And understanding what those first 2 trumpets are tells us something critical about the state of the world when Wormwood arrives. Because by the time Wormwood poisons 1/3 of the fresh water, humanity is already in crisis, already devastated, already desperate. Let me show you the sequence. First trumpet, vegetation destroyed. Revelation 8:7. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. The first trumpet judgment targets vegetation. 1/3 of all trees are burned up. All green grass is burned up. Think about what that means. 1/3 of all forests gone. The Amazon rainforest, the forests of North America, Europe, Asia. 1/3 of them burned to ash. All grass gone. Every lawn, every meadow, every grassland, every prairie, all of it burned. This isn't localized wildfires. This is global, simultaneous, catastrophic burning that destroys massive portions of Earth's plant life. The ecological consequences would be immediate and severe. Oxygen production drops dramatically. The first trumpet doesn't just inconvenience humanity. It begins the systematic destruction of Earth's life support systems. Second trumpet, oceans contaminated. Revelation 8:8-9. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. The second trumpet targets the oceans. Something, as it were a great mountain burning with fire, is cast into the sea. This could be a massive asteroid or comet impacting the ocean, a volcanic eruption of unprecedented scale, some kind of supernatural fire and brimstone like Sodom and Gomorrah. Regardless of the exact mechanism, the result is clear. 1/3 of the sea becomes blood. The water turns red, thick, poisonous, like the first plague in Egypt when the Nile turned to blood. 1/3 of sea life dies. Fish, whales, dolphins, every marine creature, 1/3 of all sea life perishes. The stench of dead marine life would be overwhelming. The ecological collapse catastrophic. 1/3 of ships are destroyed. This could mean ships caught in the initial impact, or it could mean that 1/3 of shipping capacity becomes unusable as ports are destroyed and sea lanes become impassable. Now comes the third trumpet, fresh water poisoned. And then, after vegetation is burned and oceans are contaminated, after food supplies have collapsed and trade has broken down, after billions are already in crisis, the third trumpet sounds. Wormwood falls, and 1/3 of the fresh water, the only remaining water source that's drinkable, becomes poisoned. Do you see the pattern? Do you see the systematic destruction? First, land-based food and oxygen production destroyed. Second, ocean-based food and trade destroyed. Third, drinking water destroyed. The three essential resources for human survival, vegetation, ocean resources, and fresh water, are being systematically eliminated. This isn't random. This isn't chaotic. This is methodical judgment designed to force humanity to face the consequences of rejecting God. But here's what makes this even more severe. These judgments don't happen in isolation. They compound. When vegetation burns, first trumpet, ash and debris contaminate remaining water sources. Air quality deteriorates. Climate becomes unstable. When oceans are contaminated, second trumpet, the water cycle is disrupted. Rain becomes acidic. Coastal aquifers are poisoned with seawater intrusion. And then, when fresh water is poisoned, third trumpet, there's nothing left. No vegetation to produce food. No ocean to provide protein. No fresh water to sustain life. Survival becomes impossible without divine intervention or supernatural provision. The state of the world. When wormwood falls, so when that great star falls from heaven, when wormwood poisons the rivers and springs, here's what the world looks like. 1/3 of forests gone, all grass gone. Landscape is barren. Food production collapsed. Air quality deteriorating. 1/3 of ocean dead. Shipping destroyed. No trade, no fish. Coastal cities evacuated or destroyed. Now 1/3 of fresh water poisoned. The final essential resource becomes unavailable. Billions of people without food, without trade, without drinkable water. Governments collapsing, economies in ruins, social order breaking down. Desperate people doing desperate things to survive. And this is only the third trumpet. There are 4 more trumpet judgments after Wormwood, and then 7 bowl judgments after that. The tribulation period is described as the worst time in human history, and the trumpet judgments show us why. Jesus described end times events as birth pangs, contractions that increase in frequency and intensity until the moment of birth. Matthew 24:8. All these are the beginning of sorrows. The Greek word for sorrows is odin, birth pangs, labor pains. The trumpet judgments follow this exact pattern. First trumpet, severe but survivable. Humanity can still function. Second trumpet, more severe. Major systems breaking down. Third trumpet, critical. Survival becomes nearly impossible. Fourth trumpet, worse still. We'll look at this in a moment. Each one more intense than the last. Each one closer together. Until finally, the birth, the second coming of Christ, and the establishment of His kingdom.